It is now live.
Well, thank
Okay.
you so much for taking the time to meet with individual citizens like this. I just think that's great to have a councilman be so available like that.
Oh, thank you. Well, I kind of view myself as a representative of the community, but if I don't talk to people, it's really hard to know what they think, right? And
For
so
sure.
this topic has come up. Actually, this is probably our third office hour on this topic. And so it's something that, and by the way, people are not just talking about University Avenue, they're also talking about California Avenue. And
Sure.
what was interesting was at our last council meeting, we had we had well we had actually, was it last council meeting or my last office hours? I forgot which one it was, but we had a restaurateur. I think it was my office hours. A restaurateur on Cal Ave who talked about how, with the COVID-19 distancing requirements, he would have to, I mean, it would be absolutely essential for him to be able to kind of spill out into the streets. And I think there was actually one other person who called in to our council meeting as well. So it's definitely coming up. And then on at the council meeting, I actually brought this topic up the last council meeting to see uh, what are the possibilities. This wasn't agendized, so it's catching staff a little bit off guard here, but it would bring up the topic of, well, could we do this, right? Now, the problem is the backdrop of all this is that we're going through massive budget cuts right now,
Sure.
and and including cuts to planning, and and so part of the challenge is that it's hard to have a lot of new initiatives given people are like, oh, am I
I
going to have a
totally
job next?
understand.
Yeah, yeah.
I,
So
I mean, I think as a just taking a half step back, we really the budget is super important, and the ability for Palo Alto to be able to afford things is critical. And it seems to me that we need to think for a second about how to keep our businesses healthy, because if we don't give these businesses the opportunity to employ people, if you think about the supply chain of these restaurants on University Ave, they're really critical to the revenue streams that Palo Alto has. I mean, I think if we don't get more people coming and dining at the restaurants in University Avenue, they're not going to pay taxes. There's fewer payroll taxes. There's less crossover traffic to retail establishments in general. And
mhm.
so I think it makes a ton of sense for us to do maybe some not super expensive things that we might be able to do. I know it's time and attention to try to keep our businesses healthy, because that's going to help the budget in the medium term for sure.
Yeah, I think that also I've talked to um, a few restaurants about this idea, and um, and so far everyone I've talked to, and in fact I talked to one of the biggest restaurant operator in our city, and he was saying that uh, I mean, the economics of a restaurant is, a good restaurant, you're talking about single digit best type of profit margin, right? Yeah,
Sure.
and so if you have to space every other table, or it just totally it cannot work, right?
Right.
And so I think in the past there's been a lot of concern in the community about doing something like this, especially among the business owners or the restaurateurs in that area. But I think right now it seems like it's swinging the other way. Now, what I don't know is, what about everyone else? What about like the retailers, or some people are worried that it's going to take away parking, right?
Hmm.
um, I've been checking also with kind of like the residential neighborhoods around in that area to kind of see uh, what kind of pushback there would be in terms of, is it going to push traffic or parking into their into their neighborhoods. So far, I haven't done a really broad survey, but so far there doesn't seem to be that much concern, mainly because we're in a downturn, right? We're kind of in a shutdown mode, so there's not a lot of traffic to begin with. So it seems like people are intrigued. I haven't found too much intense resistance. I think the only pushback I've seen so far um, is staff, right? I think there's not a lot of excitement from
Sure.
staff to take on yet a new project right at this very moment. So
and I guess I that's the part that you know infinitely more about than I do, because I have not been involved in the city government at all, even though I've lived here for about 10 years in the downtown area. Um, but I feel like from just the general sentiment of talking to both businesses and um, residents of Palo Alto right now, there's a feeling of, hey, this things have changed a lot, and I think there's near universal sentiment that I think there's first recognition that we understand that um, look, people feel unsafe, and there's going to need to be some changes that happen to make us be able to come back closer to a more normal life. And I think people are willing to I think people understand that there has to be some changes with things like social distancing to be able to return to even a semblance of normal life. And I think going out to restaurants, if these restaurants want to, if we wanted to enable restaurant eating at a restaurant to be done safely, there's going to have to be more social distance. And like you said, to make the economics of a restaurant work, we really need to enable our restaurants to be able to have closer to the same volume of tables that they used to be able to have. I mean, most of the restaurants that stay, they were able to do that by really fitting a good number of tables into the restaurant that that literally won't be safe for the
Yeah.
next, for the foreseeable future, for who knows how long, at least 6 months, probably a year, I don't know. And so
I,
if we could give them tables, more tables outside, I think that's critical to their health, and it's critical to people being able to go and continuing to have restaurants in Palo Alto. Um,
Yeah, no,
so
I think you make a good point. I know that some people have put out some surveys now to kind of survey people. I haven't seen the final results, but I know I've seen some on Nextdoor and Facebook and other places. One pushback I got from staff when I brought up last Monday um, was that I guess there were some restrictions from the county that have to be overcome on this topic.
mhm,
So um, I know Joe Smidian, kind of our district
sure.
uh, supervisor, for the county. I should probably bring that up with him. He has regular kind of like check-in times with us to see kind of how do we overcome it. But I know that like Larry Klein in Sunnyvale, I think he's a mayor or a council member there, um, has also been talking about this, and so I've seen a lot of cities talking or doing something along
Well,
this lines.
well, in the topic of Santa Clara County, I've seen a lot more forward-looking statements from Mountain View, and their city council and their mayor have made much more aggressive statements than Palo Alto has already about what they plan to do with their downtown area. And I think they're, you know, at least a half step further than Palo Alto is in terms of planning to spill restaurants out into the street. And obviously nobody's thinking about, you know, nobody wants to do this in an irresponsible way. And there are people that are much more educated on the health risks and when is the right time to do this. But I don't think we're super far away from being able to do some more socially distanced dining. And it will, there, I don't know, I'm not going to be able to speak to, is it, you know, next week, next month, 3 months, but at some point that will come back. We'll be ready
Yeah,
in some form to do that. And I think that, you know, with how much complexity there is in implementing some of these things, that we need to start preparing for what would that look like when it does happen. Because the earlier we can get that, as we were discussing before, the earlier we can be able to do that safely, the more we can keep our restaurants healthy, keep our downtown retail healthy, keep the quality of life as best we can for residents.
yeah, no, I agree. Um, so yeah, so uh, I think definitely, and also, you know, from I when I brought the topic, um, there weren't a lot of other council members who kind of jumped on it. So 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 I definitely think there needs to be more people writing in or calling in, kind
Hmm.
of advocating for
Okay.
this. I think
That's exactly what I actually wanted to make sure. I know we might be running out of time. What I wanted to make sure I got out of this from you
yeah,
was a sense of how can we help as a community. I think I'll just be frank and speak for a number of people that I've talked to that feel like there's not an efficient way um, to work on an initiative like this with city government because everything is so slow and it's unclear how to engage and how decisions get made and how
yeah,
to influence those decisions. And we a lot of at least the people I interact with, we're business owners and we're busy people, and it's
yeah.
like we don't have time to come 100
I know.
hours and wait a bunch of meetings to
Yeah,
try to do something that we can't influence. Like how
yeah.
can we help?
Well, I think definitely writing in would be great. I think the surveys are great, or petitions like that are great. I know some people are trying to like survey all the business owners, but if I think staff, what they don't want to do, they don't want to step into a fire, right? They don't want to step in like
Sure,
do something and then people are super upset. They just don't want to do that, and for good reason. Neither do council members, right?
sure.
I think what's been going on for the past few weeks is we have this tremendous budget crisis, right? That's just sucking all the oxygen out of the room. And so even though this is something that has actually been very important, and like cities like Navi are moving forward on this. Navi, by the way, is in a different situation than us. I mean, they get a lot of rent income from Google, from the shoreline area, so they don't have the same budget woes that we have. So that's one of the reasons why they don't have to worry about this kind of stuff as much as we have to worry about it. But but I think probably the thing that would be, because I know people are busy. I think if people could write in though, or if they call in, or they could, you know, participate in the petitions or surveys. I think that's because if my colleagues and staff see that this is something in general, there's no real, and I haven't, I've been looking for like resistance to this. I mean, only resistance I've seen to it is staff is like kind of busy and there's county conflict and this and that. But there hasn't I haven't found anyone constituent wise in the city who's been like, oh, don't really shouldn't do this.
Well,
But
I feel like maybe it's just that there's been so much momentum that people didn't to the extent there is another side, they weren't comfortable stepping in on a forum like Nextdoor, for example. But usually there are plenty of people on Nextdoor that have very strong opinions about all things.
yeah,
And
people,
I was shocked that this issue. I don't know if you've seen the thread, but there are. This is like 100% pro, 0% con
yeah, yeah.
um, on the people that I've talked to about this.
So probably, I brought it up as kind of like a comment, and it didn't get too much traction at council.
Yeah.
So the only other way to make it happen, unless staff kind of willingly does this, is I would have to do a kind of colleagues memo. That means a couple other council members who need to sign on to this, and then we could force staff to do it. But I do know that um, I know there's some of these surveys floating around. I think if we could get some of that stuff published
Mm-hmm.
and um, probably a couple of council members would be willing to stick their neck out on this. But I think the main thing that people worry about is backlash. Is people going to be like, is there going to be
Yeah.
something direly wrong with this?
So
That
to me, really quickly, because I want to be respectful of your time, I feel like there's an opportunity here to do this in a low budget trial sort of way that should
Mhm.
mitigate some of those backlash concerns. I know that a lot of restaurant tours have said at a minimum, let's try to convert just some of the parking spaces outside the restaurants into
Yeah,
parklets or whatever you want to call them to give us some more additional outdoor tables. I would really love to see, and I think a lot of people would really love to see some exploration, if even if it's partial times of the day and not the entire day,
yeah,
of times when we could shut down sections of University Avenue, like between the cross streets, so there's still
mhm,
cross traffic, there's
yeah,
still access for people who are doing drop off and
yeah,
pickup um, and to have restaurants be able to spill tables all the way out into the street. And I think that is a significant step forward beyond parklets. And I think that I'd hate to not have that there be a serious discussion of what would it look like to shut down an entire block, because we have this half solution of parklets. I
yeah,
think parklets are a half solution, and I would love to see more tables, more room to walk around. And I think that can be done relatively cheaply. I mean, obviously, any program that the city supports has some, red tape and budgetary stuff going on around it, but it just can't be that expensive to put some cones at the end of the street
Yeah.
and say, restaurants, you can move your tables out here.
Yeah, no, it definitely not. I think it does probably take some police, right? To
Mhm.
kind of do that, and even the police are being cut, so that's part of the challenge. But let's see. So there's no official council meeting this week, but there's a budget meeting. I could try to bring it in. It's not really the appropriate time to bring it in, but I do. At the end of the month, we're supposed to be kind of starting to reopen, right? And so I kind of feel like now is kind of like the time. It's just
Sure.
it's just also we have this kind of this friction going on because not because of this, but because of other stuff, like mainly the budget issues. Um, but
Are there not forums outside of the council meeting itself, or like, let's say a business owner, right, as soon, so first of all, it may not be safe, it may not be allowed by the
oh,
county,
actually,
but
actually, that's a good point. If a business owner submits an application, right,
mhm.
that's another way of doing it, right? So if
So for example, I know a couple of restaurants right now that have
yeah,
said, I want as much outdoor seating as I can get.
yeah. So
And
if they
I've
could,
talked to them and they've said, definitely, I want that, give it to me.
yeah, so if they submit a application for that, I'm not sure if there's any cost for it, or and because I don't think there's a formal form for this right now, but if they submit an application. I think that's probably the fastest way.
So I
That's
already
probably
know. Where do they submit that application? How does that work?
they would submit it to they would have to submit it through planning. So they would basically the development center is kind of closed, but they could submit it online to the development center to basically say, hey, we want to be able to um, put seating outside, and then that would get the ball rolling.
Okay. Well, I
Yeah.
Sorry to
will
cut in, but we're kind of late.
overtime.
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay.
Okay.
Well,
Well, I'll have some restaurants do that,
yeah,
and I'd love to,
but
uh,
that will get the ball rolling though, right? Because then it becomes official application.
sure, we'll make that happen, and I'll continue to encourage people to write into, I guess, City Council at cityofpaloalto.org
Definitely.
with other opinions.
Okay. Thank you so much, John. Really appreciate it. Have a great weekend.
Thank you, Greg. I really appreciate it. Bye bye.
Of course. Okay. Bye bye.